So imagine receiving a wedding invitation, right?
Okay.
The venue is listed, the dress code is completely set, but the date is just completely blank.
Oh, this sounds like a total nightmare.
Right. In fact, the bride herself has absolutely no idea when she's getting married. She just, has to sleep in her wedding dress every single night.
Wow.
Yeah, with her bags packed by the door, just waiting for a surprise midnight arrival. And to modern ears, I mean, that sounds logistically insane.
It does, but, to an ancient Jewish listener, that was literally just Tuesday.
Exactly. And according to the massive stack of research we're looking at today, it is also the secret key to unlocking one of the most heavily debated concepts in all of history.
It's a fascinating historical paradox, really, because the ancient customs that seem so chaotic to us were actually highly, highly structured.
Right, and our sources argue today that if you don't understand that specific cultural structure, you basically can't possibly understand the theological doctrine built on top of it.
Yeah.
So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, our mission is to take this huge stack of theological lecture notes, historical texts, and scriptural analyses, and really unpack a doctrine that basically breaks the internet and causes endless controversy. The rapture.
Yeah, we're going to map out the logical and scriptural framework behind this idea, specifically looking through the lens of those ancient Jewish wedding traditions.
Right. We want to decode what all this actually means for you, the listener, as you try to balance your daily life, your job, your mortgage, with these massive future expectations.
And before we get into the actual mechanics of this, let's just establish our objective really clearly here.
Please do, yeah.
Our role here isn't to endorse a specific theological timeline or to, convince you to take a certain side in this debate, whether left or right or whatever.
Exactly. We are entirely neutral here.
Right. Our goal is just to impartially map out the arguments presented in these specific sources. We want to show you how advocates of this specific view, the pre-tribulation rapture, logically construct their worldview directly from the texts.
So, to understand the end of the story, the sources basically insist we have to understand the cultural context of the people who originally wrote it.
Right.
And the foundational promise of this entire doctrine supposedly comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 14.
Yeah, that's where Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he says, I go to prepare a place for now.
See, when I read that, I just hear like a nice poetic promise about going to heaven someday.
Sure.
But you're saying an ancient listener hears something entirely different in that exact phrasing.
Oh, absolutely. They hear a literal marriage proposal.
Wait, really? A marriage proposal?
Yeah. To understand why, we have to look at the ancient Jewish wedding model, specifically the betrothal phase, which is called the ketubah.
The ketubah.
Right. And this wasn't just, a casual promise to get married. It was a fiercely legally binding covenant.
Yeah.
And it always began with the payment of a purchase price for the bride.
Well, let me just pause you there because the concept of a purchase price sounds a little bit, I don't know, transactional today.
Yeah, it definitely does.
So how does that actually map onto the theology and the sources?
So in this scriptural framework, the purchase price for the bride, which represents the church in this analogy, was paid on the cross.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and once that price was paid, the bride was considered legally spoken for. She was sanctified, set apart.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the really fascinating part of the ketubah is what happens immediately after that legally binding commitment is made. The groom doesn't stay with the bride. He just departs.
Wait, so he pays the price, secures the marriage covenant, and then just walks away?
He goes back to his father's house.
Wow.
And he has a very specific manual mission there. He has to actually build a room addition onto his father's house for him and his new bride to live in.
Ah, so that is the literal cultural context Jesus is referencing when he says, in my father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you.
Exactly. That's exactly what an ancient Jewish listener would picture.
But, okay, if the groom just vanishes for an undisclosed amount of time to, swing a hammer and build a house, the bride is just left hanging.
Pretty much.
I mean, that sounds incredibly anxiety-inducing. Does she have any kind of timeline for his return at all?
None. Zero. She doesn't know if he'll be gone for months or perhaps even longer.
So who decides when it's done?
Only the father of the groom gets to decide when the room addition is officially finished and adequate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The bride simply has to be prepared to receive the groom at basically any moment. And this cultural reality is the foundation for a very crucial theological concept in our sources.
Which is the doctrine of imminence.
Right, exactly.
Meaning an event that is impending, something that could happen right now.
Right. It means the next expectation. It's an event with absolutely no precedent condition and no warning signs.
Because she has no idea when the father will finally say, okay, the room's ready.
Precisely. Because when the father finally does tell the son that the room is ready, the groom initiates this crazy surprise gathering. Surprise gathering.
Yeah, he shows up, often in the dead of night, with a literal shout and the blowing of a horn to gather his bride.
That is wild.
He snatches her away, taking her back to the chuppah, which is the wedding canopy, and that's then followed by a private 7-day marriage supper.
Okay, so if the ancient marriage pattern explains the why of this event, the groom coming back to retrieve the bride he paid for, the sources then kind of transition into the actual physics of how this is supposed to happen.
Right, the mechanics of it.
Yeah, because skeptics always bring out the exact same argument. They say the word rapture isn't even in the Bible.
Right. You hear that all the time.
So how do the sources intellectually defend an entire doctrine if the central word isn't even in the text?
Well, they do it by tracing the linguistic journey of the text itself. I mean, the critics are technically correct that the English word rapture does not appear in the Greek New Testament.
Right.
But if you read the Latin Vulgate translation of the Bible, which, was the standard for centuries, you will find the word raptimer. Raptimer. Okay.
Yeah, and that Latin word is a direct translation of the original Greek word used by Paul in 1 Thessalonians 4, which is harpazo.
Harpazo. What is the literal translation of that Greek term?
It means to be forcibly caught up or snatched away.
Snatched away.
Yeah, it implies a sudden, powerful, almost violent removal from danger. And our source notes that this isn't just a single isolated concept either.
Oh, it's not.
No, the text actually identifies 7 distinct instances of a harpazo or a snatching away throughout Scripture.
Read 7. Like who else?
Well, it includes historical figures like Enoch and Philip who were physically relocated.
Okay, so the mechanics of how a sudden physical removal works are where the source gets incredibly dense.
Very dense.
Yeah. The analysis points to 1 Corinthians 15, where the text says, this snatching away will happen in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye.
Right.
And I have always just interpreted that as like a metaphor for just moving really fast, like a blink.
And honestly, most readers interpret it exactly that way. But the source material takes us down the staggering mathematical rabbit hole regarding the original Greek phrase used for moment.
I love this part.
It's wild. The word implies the smallest indivisible fraction of time possible. So the sources actually calculate the time it takes for light to transit the thickness of the human iris, which is a literal twinkling of an eye, and they arrive at a concept in quantum physics known as Planck time.
Planck time, which is 10 to the minus 43 seconds.
Yes.
I mean, it's a number so infinitesimally small, my brain just completely rejects it. It's literally the shortest unit of time possible in the physical universe.
It's basically the frame rate of the universe.
Right. But how does a physical, carbon-based human body undergo an instantaneous transformation in 10 to the minus 43 seconds without just, violating the laws of physics?
Right. So to explain this, the source uses an analogy comparing the human body to technology.
Okay, how does that work?
Think of your physical carbon-based body as hardware and your eternal soul or your consciousness as software.
Software, okay.
Yeah. Software itself has no mass. If you take a completely blank computer disk and weigh it, and then you load it with 1 million gigabytes of highly complex software and weigh it again, the physical weight remains exactly identical.
Because the software is essentially just information. It doesn't actually weigh anything.
Exactly. And in the realm of physics, if something has absolutely no mass, it is not subject to the dimension of time.
Oh, wow.
So the argument here is that their eternal component is software. It's massless and timeless, just temporarily residing in a physical hardware suit.
So time doesn't even apply to it.
Right. Therefore, what the harpazo represents is an instantaneous hardware upgrade.
A hardware upgrade.
Yeah. The source highlights a very rare Greek word found in 2 Corinthians, oikaterion, which actually translates to a highly specialized heavenly dwelling or body.
So in a fraction of a Planck second, the massless software gets downloaded into a flawless, new oikaterion hardware suit.
You got it.
It's basically like upgrading your phone's operating system instantaneously, just bypassing the slow download process entirely.
That captures the mechanics of it perfectly.
But let me stop you there, because there's a major logical hurdle the sources address here.
Okay, what's that?
If this is a secret midnight vanishing where people are snatched away in a Planck second, how does that actually square with the countless verses describing Jesus, like splitting the sky with an army where every single eye sees him?
Ah, right.
People seem to conflate this harpazo with the second coming of Christ.
They do. That conflation is actually one of the most common points of confusion in this whole debate.
So how do the sources separate them?
The source argues they are completely, fundamentally different events, separated by a period of time, and they list stark contrasts based directly on a literal reading of the text.
What kind of contrasts?
Well, in the rapture, the text states Christ comes in the air for his bride. There are no predicted signs at all. It's entirely imminent. And there are no translated glorified saints returning with him to the earth.
Because he is snatching them up from the earth.
Exactly. But in the second coming, the text describes him coming all the way down to the earth.
Oh, like physically landing.
Yeah, the prophecy literally states, his feet actually touch the Mount of Olives. He is coming with his bride, the saints, rather than for them.
Right.
And the second coming is not imminent at all. It follows a highly specific, mathematically predictable timeline of global signs, which concludes this massive period of global wrath.
Okay, but skeptics would argue that this is a highly convenient, maybe even, arrogant loophole.
Oh, definitely.
Critics look at this pre-tribulation view and they say believers just want an escapist fantasy. They think they get a free ticket to skip the really bad stuff while the rest of the world just burns.
Yeah, it's a very common critique.
Given that most of the world has suffered horribly for 2,000 years, how do the sources intellectually defend this sudden exemption from suffering?
Well, the sources address that skeptic argument head-on by making a crucial distinction. They separate general persecution from the specific prophesied event known as the Great Tribulation.
General persecution meaning what we've seen historically.
Right. General hardship, martyrdom, the cruelty of a fallen world, that's been the promised reality for believers for 2 millennia. I mean, Jesus explicitly told his followers they would face tribulation in the world. The source doesn't deny the reality of historical suffering at all.
So then what makes the Great Tribulation entirely different?
The Great Tribulation, or as the Old Testament actually refers to it, the time of Jacob's trouble, is described not as the wrath of man, but as a specific, unprecedented period of divine global wrath.
Divine wrath. Okay, so the source of the wrath is different.
Exactly. And the source uses historical statistics to really emphasize the difference in scale here.
Like what?
Well, during the tragic Holocaust in Germany, roughly 1 in 3 Jewish people were wiped out by the horrific wrath of man.
Which is horrifying.
Horrifying. But the ancient prophecy in Zechariah regarding this upcoming Great Tribulation states that 2 out of 3 will perish globally.
Globally. Wow.
Yes. It is a completely different mechanism of judgment entirely.
So it's literally the wrath of God being poured out, rather than just the general cruelty of humanity.
Right. And the argument rests on verses like 1 Thessalonians 5.9, which explicitly states that the church is not appointed to suffer God's wrath.
Okay, I see the logic there.
In this theological framework, it's just like a government recalling its ambassador before formally declaring war on a foreign nation. The bride is called home before this specific period of divine apocalyptic judgment even begins.
Okay, but if the sources have all these clear verses, the cultural wedding models, the mathematical physics all lined up so neatly, why do so many highly educated theologians just vehemently disagree?
That's a great question.
Because why is this still a debate? I mean, critics constantly claim this whole idea of a pre-tribulation rapture was just invented by a guy named John Nelson Darby in the 1800s.
Right, the Darby critique. Well, the root of the disagreement basically boils down to a concept called hermeneutics.
Hermeneutics. Let's slow down on that term for a second. That basically means your rules for interpretation, right? Like how you choose to read a text.
Yes. Exactly. It is the method of interpretation. The source explains that if you look at early church history, which was heavily influenced by figures like Origen and Augustine, a view called amillennialism became dominant.
And amillennialism means what?
It's a view that tends to allegorize prophecy.
Allegorize it.
Yeah.
But why would Augustine, who was, a brilliant thinker, choose to read these prophecies as metaphors instead of literal events?
Honestly, because of the cultural context he was living in.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, during Augustine's time, the Roman Empire was suddenly Christianized under Constantine.
Right, the whole shift in the empire.
Exactly. So the massive, brutal persecutions of the early church had largely stopped, and the church was actually gaining incredible political power.
I see.
So theologians began to look around and think, hey, maybe we are in the promised kingdom right now.
That makes total sense. They felt like they had won.
Exactly. They looked at the 1,845 references to Christ ruling on earth in the Old Testament, and they concluded those must just be poetic metaphors for the church's current spiritual reign rather than, future literal events.
So their cultural context completely dictated their interpretation.
It did. But the premillennial view, the one our sources are arguing for today, takes the exact opposite approach.
Which is taking it literally.
Right. The premillennial view applies a literal hermeneutic, and the logic is pretty straightforward. If the hundreds of prophecies about the first coming were fulfilled literally, being born in Bethlehem, riding a donkey, being betrayed for specific pieces of silver, then the prophecies about the second coming should be interpreted literally as well.
Okay, but what about the critique that this literal pre-trib view is just a modern American invention from the 1830s?
The source refutes that by digging into much older church manuscripts.
Older than Darby.
Way older. They quote early church figures like Ephraim the Syrian, who wrote extensively in the 4th century.
The 4th century, that's definitely not the 1800s.
Right. And Ephraim explicitly stated that the saints and elect are gathered prior to the tribulation to be taken to the Lord, lest they see the confusion that is to overwhelm the world.
Wow.
So while the doctrine may have been, systematized and repopularized in the 1800s by figures like Darby, the foundational concept itself is ancient.
And the idea that this is an ancient concept actually brings us to some of the most surprising material in the sources, I think. The Old Testament clues.
Oh, yes, the fractal patterns.
Right. Because a skeptic might say, okay, sure, Paul talked about the harpazo in the New Testament. But if God is consistent, shouldn't we see this pattern way earlier in history?
And we do, but it requires understanding how ancient Jewish scholars read texts compared to modern Western readers.
How so?
Well, to the modern Western mind, history is just a straight line moving from point A to point B.
Right, chronological.
Exactly. But to the biblical writers, history is often viewed as cyclical or fractal. They basically believe that pattern is prologue.
Pattern is prologue. I love that phrase.
Yeah, meaning a historical event is often just a micro model of a future macro prophecy.
So it's like they're looking for repeating shapes in history,
Exactly.
The sources point to the story of Noah's Ark as a prime example of this fractal pattern.
It's a perfect example.
Because if I ask how many people were saved from the apocalyptic flood, the standard Sunday school answer is 8. Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives.
Right. But the source points out a crucial detail. Before the floodwaters ever began to rise, before the judgment was officially initiated, a man named Enoch was taken.
He was snatched away.
Yes, he was snatched away without ever seeing death. So within that narrative pattern, you actually have 3 groups.
Okay, break that down.
You have a group that perishes in the judgment. You have a group that is protected and preserved through the judgment, which represents Noah's family safe in the ark. And then you have one man who is removed completely prior to the judgment even starting.
That is fascinating. And that exact pattern repeats again in the book of Daniel, doesn't it?
It does. It's the same shape.
We have the famous story of Daniel's 3 friends being thrown into the fiery furnace
Right.
to King Nebuchadnezzar.
Right.
And the furnace is a classic theological model of intense tribulation.
Very intense.
The 3 friends are preserved through the fire. They don't burn. But the question the source asks, which I had honestly never thought of, is, where is Daniel?
Right. He is completely absent from the entire narrative of that specific chapter.
He's the main character of the book. But during the ultimate fiery trial, he just isn't there.
Nowhere to be found.
The source presumes he was, like, away on an administrative errand for the king or something. But the theological pattern is identical to the flood. Someone is completely removed from the scene of the trial before the fire even starts.
Exactly. Those fractal patterns really reinforce the logical framework of the doctrine for these advocates.
Okay, but understanding the theology, the ancient wedding customs, the quantum physics of a harpazo, it brings us to a highly practical crossroads.
It really does.
What does this actually mean for the listener?
The so what?
Yeah. If you are listening to this on your commute right now, stressed about your inbox, your mortgage, your kids, how do you balance the ultimate any-minute interruption with the reality of your 9-to-5 life?
It's tough.
If you genuinely believe the groom could arrive today, breaking the laws of physics to upgrade your hardware. How do you not just become completely paralyzed?
Well, the source identifies two very specific, very dangerous pitfalls that believers historically fall into regarding this doctrine: rapturitis and rapturemania.
Rapturitis. That sounds like a disease.
It essentially is a spiritual disease.
Yeah.
It's the state of being so heavenly minded that you are of absolutely no earthly good.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, people become so obsessed with the imminent return that they just check out of their daily responsibilities. They stop planning for the future, they stop investing in their communities, and they just, sit around waiting for an escape hatch.
Just bags packed by the door, doing nothing. And rapturemania is the other extreme, right?
Yeah, rapturemania is the obsessive need to calculate and set exact dates for this event.
Which is always a disaster.
Always. The source lists a long, embarrassed history of this trap. You have William Miller predicting the end in 1843, and when nothing happened, he just revised it to 1844.
How convenient.
Right. And this extends all the way to modern panics, like the Mayan calendar in 2012, or various blood moon alignments.
The irony of setting dates is just incredible to me, given that the texts these date setters quote, like Matthew 24, literally and explicitly state, "Of that day and hour knoweth no man."
Exactly. Jesus literally said he would come at an hour when you think not.
Logically, if someone confidently predicts a specific Tuesday on a calendar, that is pretty much the one day you can guarantee the event is not happening.
Very true. So the biblical mandate provided in the source to combat both of these extremes is very simple. Occupy till I come.
Occupy, meaning stay busy.
Right. And the ultimate model for balancing prophetic expectation with daily life is actually Daniel.
Because Daniel is living in Babylon, functioning as like a high-level secular government administrator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Daniel knew from studying the writings of Jeremiah that the 70-year captivity of his people was actually coming to an end.
So he knew the prophetic timeline was concluding.
He did. But his response to that knowledge wasn't to, quit his job or isolate himself on a mountain.
Right.
Instead, he fell into intense repentant prayer, and he continued executing his daily administrative duties with such excellence that even his political enemies couldn't find a single flaw in his work.
Wow. So an imminent expectation shouldn't make you lazy, and it definitely shouldn't make you a conspiracy theorist.
Not at all.
It should act as a purifying filter for your daily habits.
Oh.
If the groom could literally walk in at any second, you want to be found doing exactly what you were supposed to be doing.
You remain spiritually awake, but actively and excellently engaged in your current earthly responsibilities. Imminence is not an excuse to check out of the world. It is the ultimate motivation to lean into your purpose while you still have time.
That's a great way to put it. Let's bring all these threads together, because this deep dive has covered massive ground today.
We really have.
We started with the ancient Jewish wedding custom, the ketubah, the purchase price, and the groom leaving to prepare a room. And we saw how that cultural custom provides the vital blueprint for the promise in John 14.
Which then directly translates into the mechanics of the harpazo, the sudden snatching away happening in a planck second, completely bypassing the dimension of time.
Right. We saw how this imminent event creates a profound contrast with the second coming. And we saw how, through fractal historical patterns and literal hermeneutics, this doctrine basically demands an active, watchful, and deeply engaged daily life, rather than just escapism.
And as we close out, there is one final reflection drawn from the source's concepts of dimensionality that is really worth mulling over.
Yeah, what is the final thought for the listener today?
If the real you is eternal software, just temporarily residing in a fragile physical hardware suit,
Right.
and if the ultimate upgrade to that hardware could happen in a fraction of a microsecond without any warning whatsoever, how does that reality change the way you program your mind and your actions today?
Wow.
If time is truly irrelevant to the soul, are you spending all your energy maintaining the temporary hardware, or are you investing in the eternal software?
Man, that is a question that will definitely stick with you long after the commute is over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep exploring the sources. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us on this hour on the Archive Hour. Join us on our next hour as we bring you more adventures from the Bible.